get started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode.
Welcome back to the Fasting Method Podcast. This is Coach Terri Lance, and I am here with Coach Heather Shuker. Heather, how are you doing today?
I am great, Terri. Thanks so much for having me again.
Absolutely. For listeners, they're going to be very excited to know that this is not just a once in a while thing. Plan to have you back on the regular. And to kind of get this rolling today, we are going to a topic that you brought up to me a long time ago. It's something that I think is kind of near and dear to the way you look at all of this. And so I was very excited that you wanted to do this topic. And I actually think it's a topic that you and I could do several episodes about because it's a pretty big topic and we see it a lot. So you might have enough to say about this that it will cover several episodes because I think you and I can really dig into this one. So Heather, let's talk motivation.
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk motivation, Terri. I think this is something that is not just near and dear to my heart. I think a lot of our listeners and our community members can relate in this topic and how it affects the choices that they make in this journey.
Absolutely. You know, sometimes when we talk about a topic like this, we all use this word and we all think we all mean the exact same thing and we all assume it. So I'm curious just to kind of first define what motivation is, because I also think we're going to talk about what motivation is not. So Heather, when you think of the word motivation, what does that bring to mind for you?
I will tell you that has definitely changed over time for me, but certainly the idea of motivation is having a sensation or a feeling that you want to do something. Right? That, you're excited to do it. It's a positive feeling. It's a good feeling. And you feel like, yes, this is something how I want to spend my time. That's what the idea of motivation, I think, is what I used to think was the crux of the whole thing, is a positive anticipatory feeling.
I was thinking of some synonyms then for that and, inspiration. Like, what is the inspiration behind this or the incentive? What is making it seem worthwhile to do this thing? What is the incentive? Some people, I just looked up synonyms and one is provocation. What is provoking this? Hopefully we're not going to dig too much into that. But I think big picture, really simply put, it's the reason why we do what we do. Reason or reasons we do what we do. So why is it, Heather, that initially, months ago, you brought this up as something that you would want to do in an episode? Why is motivation so important to you?
I think the reason it's so important is because of how often people find themselves in a stasis point, in a holding pattern, or even backtracking because they feel like motivation is absolutely necessary in order for them to move forward. And so if you think about motivation as something that is a positive feeling, think about things that we definitely are motivated to do, right? If you're, see a big meal and you haven't eaten in a while, you feel highly motivated to eat, right? If you see a puppy, a cute little squishy puppy, like you feel so motivated to pick it up and love on it, right? So motivation in our heads sometimes can feel like something just so powerful, so positive, and just so easy to get us to do the thing that we want to do. And so I think this is an important topic because when we're doing the hard things that it takes to make permanent lifestyle changes that we talk about in the fasting method, whether that be fasting, whether that be changing our nutrition and, just in general lifestyle changes, we don't necessarily have that positive, good, highly energized, I can't wait feeling. And if we're sitting around waiting for it, is that a good idea to not do anything because we don't have it and we're just going to wait?
Yeah, I think that is where this topic becomes so important. And I agree with you. So often I hear people use the term motivation as it is going to be the game changer. And if I just get the right motivation, then I will do the steps. And, you use this example of a puppy and it's like, well, what is the motivation? My motivation is I want to take that little sucker home. I want to make it my pet. I want to rub on it every day. And so oftentimes our motivations are fleeting. They're exciting in the moment. But then you get that puppy home and you have to potty train it. And you have to buy food and you have to take it to the vet and get all those things like, oh, now it doesn't sound quite so rosy. And I think that's where so many people that we work with in our community and so many of our listeners struggle is losing weight or changing our health, achieving our health or weight loss goal. It is so exciting and so motivating. But where it loses its teeth is that it means getting the vaccinations for that puppy and cleaning up lots of accidents in the house. And so I think, the way you really first introduced it to me and the way you're talking about it today, it's that we all need to really look at how much responsibility are we putting on motivation? Because what if we don't have it? What if it's Tuesday and it's gray outside? And my motivation to go walk because seeing the leaves change is so gorgeous, but it just looks icky today. Am I going to do it?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times the answer is no. If we're waiting for that new puppy feeling to constantly be there for us in order to take action, we're going to constantly come up short. It sounds harsh to say we're going to make excuses for ourselves, but oftentimes that's kind of what we end up doing. We say, well, I just don't feel motivated to fast or to exercise or to change my diet, as if that's a necessary component to do any of those things. And in your example of it's gray outside, it's not really the weather that I would really prefer walking in, and I'm feeling a little just low energy, so I'm just going to lay on the couch. Like, okay, what do you think is going to happen next if you lay on that couch? Do you think the motivation is going to find you there if you just lay there long enough? Or are you going to reach for your phone and start scrolling, or maybe flip on Netflix?
Or place an order on a food app.
Right. Exactly. So, we're depending on this feeling, this sensation to guide our actions, and we don't get it. Does that mean we don't get to reach our goals because that is such a undependable motivator?
I'm thinking both you and I, Heather, have gone through our personal journeys with our health and weight, but also even a personal journey on our professional training. And, getting through a doctoral program is, there were many days where I just thought, this is not what I want to do today. I don't want to write this paper. I don't want to read this book, because I've got 4 other ones that I'm supposed to be reading right now too. Oh, and by the way, I have a job that I'm supposed to be doing right now. If we had let whether we felt motivated on any given day determine whether we achieved our outcome, you and I would not be having this conversation.
Definitely not.
I would still be a middle school teacher. Well, actually, I never would have been able to do that long term. I don't know what I would be doing, but I definitely would not have gotten through graduate school. I think the thing that you highlight that is so important in this conversation is that motivation feels, what you're talking about is the positive feeling of motivation. It's like, ooh, I want to feel that good feeling. I want to feel great about myself, or I want to feel great in my clothes. And that is so motivating until it's gray outside and I need to go for a walk.
The other piece of that is if you do have a long journey ahead of you, you have a lot of weight to lose, for example, one walk isn't going to make you thin by the time you get home, right? One time where you make the healthy choice instead of that unfortunate choice that you used to make in the past isn't going to fix the problem. And because you don't get that instant gratification by making that hard choice, your body recognizes that. It's like, wait, now you want to, have this healthy, thin, fit body. Well, we did the thing that you were supposed to do to get it. You didn't get it. It didn't work. So are you sure you want to do that again? And so that kind of motivating positive feeling that you got at the outset, where you were excited to start fasting, you were excited to change your diet, you were excited to start exercising. Now that you've got actual feedback from doing those things that didn't result in the problem being solved, now it's like, well, I didn't get what I wanted. So why should I do that again?
It's demotivating.
It is.
It sucks the motivation out of you if you had a little bit of it to begin with.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that piece is a lot of times what trips us up. Like, I was so excited and now I'm not anymore. So I can't keep doing it because I'm not excited. Well, that's just not how it works. Exactly what you're saying with education. You got to show up whether you feel like it or not when it comes to hard things. And, we were talking about this earlier, but exactly like you were saying, Terri, when you and I were both working on these big advanced papers, trying to, get our doctorates, we did not necessarily want to be sitting in front of that computer as much as we were. We did not necessarily want to read research articles, but we were able to do that delayed gratification because we knew if we went through these steps, we were going to get to where we want to go. I think sometimes it becomes more difficult in the realm of weight loss because so many of us have tried so many things that weren't guaranteed to get us to where we want to go. So this open-ended idea that we need to put in the reps and we aren't guaranteed to necessarily get the body that we want on the other side is maybe another piece to that demotivating puzzle that I wonder if that kind of clouds us a little bit and keeps us from getting there. Unfortunately, that doesn't negate the fact that there are only so many levers that we can pull in this journey. And we're definitely not going to be doing any better by not pulling them than by actually pulling them. So showing up for ourselves is what we need to do. And in the case of what we teach at the fasting method, that means showing up for our fasts. That means showing up for our nutrition. From my perspective, that also means showing up for movement, for stress management, and for insulin sensitivity. So, we don't have the guarantee. We don't have those papers at the end that somebody is going to hand us as we walk across the stage. But the alternative is to guarantee that we're not going to get healthier. And that's not very motivating either.
Well, not writing that paper certainly is one way not to get that degree at the end. So we had a sense of that at some level, that even though I might not feel motivated in this moment to do this task, I do want the outcome. And of course, this is why so much of what I do in the master classes and in groups and in coaching sessions, focusing so much on our why. You and I had a big why sitting out there in front of us with lots of reasons that it seemed important to us. But in the day-to-day, it was the steps that were complicated. It was many of the steps that were unattractive. So a lot of people who are in our community know I talk in analogies all the time, and I jump from one analogy to another. But as you were talking, Heather, I was thinking about all the things we have to do, that term adulting that everyone says,
Yeah.
there's almost nothing fun when people talk about adulting, but they are just things we do because we need to do them, because we want to keep our house. We want to keep our job. We want to keep our teeth. Like, I hate flossing, folks. I hate flossing my teeth. But I know that based on, how my teeth go, if I don't do some flossing, one, I'm going to get a lecture when I get there next time. And there are going to be more procedures that I'm going to have done. So there are more negative consequences I'm going to have to face if I don't face the discomfort of getting up and flossing before I go to bed. Now, other people might say, oh, Terri, it's so easy. You just brush and then you just floss right while you're right there. But it's not easy for me yet. I don't feel motivated to floss. And I think that's the key here, is that a lot of things that we need to do for the pot at the end of the rainbow that we're seeking, they're not fun. If I asked myself, Terri, do you want to fast today? I can pretty much tell you every day I would say no. But if I want the health outcomes, if I want to release more body fat, it is a necessary step. And so I think that's a key to thinking about what motivates us and how we use motivation. I have to floss whether I'm motivated to floss or not. I have to fast today whether I feel motivated to do it or not.
Yeah. And I think that understanding is the crux of whether or not you're going to get to your finish line or not. If you don't accept the fact that the motivation isn't always going to be there, it is not always going to feel fun and exciting. In fact, most of the time, it won't. Most of the time, you are going to have to give yourself that push to keep going. If you don't come to terms with that, then you're not likely to succeed. The reality is, most hard things that take a long time start off exciting and get boring, at the very least, but sometimes are uncomfortable. Like you said, sometimes it's uncomfortable to fast. You get hungry, and that's not a comfortable feeling. It's something that we have to learn to overcome. It's not always comfortable to be at a restaurant and see everybody eat the things that you used to eat and not eat them. That's not a pleasant feeling that we're enduring in that moment. But enduring those moments of discomfort, it's it. That ability and that persistence and tenacity of doing the thing, even though you don't feel like it, is how you get to where you want to go. And you don't feel motivated in that moment necessarily. You don't feel this kind of fun, pleasant, I'm going to pet a puppy feeling when you're saying no to the breadbasket. But one thing that we haven't necessarily touched on is that kind of more all-encompassing feeling of satisfaction from being the kind of person that has that level of self-discipline and tenacity. And I think that right there is what makes us advanced creatures. That right there is what separates us from the lizards that want to lay around and eat all day. We're not lizards. We are advanced creatures with prefrontal cortexes that enable us to kind of forego that instant gratification and build cathedrals and iPhones and, intricate social structures, because not everything feels great in the moment that results in just extremely satisfying, powerful, huge goals that we can achieve as people. And that's the piece that needs to be there in this particular goal. You're building a skyscraper here, people. You're accomplishing a big thing that requires a whole lot of delayed gratification, a whole lot of foregoing instant gratification so that you can be something bigger than you are now. And that satisfaction, which you don't get in the moment, that you have to build and develop and experience over time, is really powerful, but it's not necessarily there with you in each of these moments.
Those listeners who come to any of our community meetings know that one of my favorite analogies happens to be sport analogies, even though I'm not big into sports. But we just went through the Olympics not too long ago. And I can't think of a better example of watching that. We get to see people winning a medal, walking out on, whatever the field is for their country, being selected, earning that spot. And what I think about the whole time is, how many times did they have to get up early and go to practice? How many sessions with their coach did they have to do where their muscles didn't want to do anymore? How many social events did they miss the first half hour of because they were in practice or with their coach or whatever? None of those things were motivating. None of those things probably felt very good, but they were moving them toward that moment where they get on the podium and get that medal put around their neck. When they see the clock, when they look out of that pool and see that they're the ones. And that's, to me, that's what we're all working on here. We're going for our gold medal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of uncomfortable practice sessions and coaching sessions and early morning trainings, but we're going to get the gold medal if we use that tenacity, like you said, to tolerate those moments that aren't puppy petting fun. Did I include all of our analogies in one yet? I'm trying here.
I think so. I think you might have them. And you're absolutely right, Terri. I think for many of those young athletes, that gold medal really does feel like the culmination of just years and years of unwitnessed, unrewarded, kind of celebrated practices. And, like you see the gymnasts with their legs wrapped and the cupping from the swimmers, right? You see all of this stuff that indicates like, man, a lot has gone into this, a lot of sweat and probably a lot of tears have gone into this. And then that gold medal moment and it's done. And those stakes feel huge. Whereas when it comes to your health, which is what we're talking about, those stakes are actually higher. And there isn't a gold medal moment. There is not an actual finish line. Like we might get to the scale number that we were looking for, but it's not like we're done. We're not ever finished until we're actually finished. So while we're both looking at all these great analogies to talk about, what self-discipline and tenacity and doing something even though you're not motivated to do it looks like, the reality, I think, is not only do we need to kind of get ourselves to do things without the motivation, we also need to be aware of the intrinsic motivation that comes into play as we start doing these things. And that's what I'm sure had you thinking about the gold medal, which had me thinking about building cathedrals. It's because of a very tangible thing. But there's also a level of intangible satisfaction that comes from reclaiming your health. Mm-hmm. And that feeling, those sensations, that kind of just satisfaction is the word I keep coming up with, or contentment that I have this and I don't want to let it go.
Well, and I think with weight loss, I think I've seen this in you and your journey. Yep. You don't get a gold medal for reaching the number. You didn't
give me one, Terri. I got no gold medal.
I did not. But every time, I don't even know, for the first few months, the first year, every time you put on that size of pants that you never knew you would be able to wear again, dang, that felt good. Every time you go to the doctor's office and they say, oh, I just need you to step on this scale, and you don't cringe or you don't question whether you're going to need an extender when you get on the airplane, those feel good, but they are not gold medal moments. But it is that intrinsic, it's more that holistic feeling good. And I think for so many of us in this realm and listening to this podcast or in our community, feeling better about ourselves, that is a very big gold medal to wear.
Oh, yes. And I'm glad our conversation went this way because, you and I are both like, you're going to suffer. It's going to be so hard. You're just going to have to do it anyway. But it's not like it's without reward. Mm-hmm. It just might be a little bit more subtle than what you're looking for when you set out. Like when you get all like razzed up and you're ready to start a new thing and it feels just so powerful. Like that's not the feeling that you can depend on, but those tiny little hints of satisfaction, like you said, like when I go into a changing room and I'm not crying, I'm feeling very jazzed for the number on the back of those pants, for that moment where I go to bed at night and I'm not putting the CPAP on my face. You walk past a mirror and you're like, look at you, girl. Damn. Those things aren't flashing red lights. They aren't, neon, but wow. Do they add up? And wow, are those little moments motivating? And I think that, and I know that you would agree, when we're trying to help people through as coaches, get them into the place where they can start getting the wind on their back and actually see the scale change, et cetera, it's critical to give yourself those moments of credit for doing the things that it's going to take to get to where you want to go. So instead of only celebrating changes in the scale, changes in the dressing room, what have you, changes in your blood work, celebrating the actual actions that you take to get you closer so that you can give yourself those teeny tiny little wins that just build up and keep you going. Like your motivation isn't going to be big and powerful. It's going to be tiny, but pay attention because each little success, it's there. And that is what's going to kind of drive you into getting to those goals that you're reaching for.
Absolutely. Heather, as you were talking, I was thinking about something that you and I kind of discussed earlier is kind of creating a motivation series of episodes. And I mentioned that earlier today. And you've touched on some really important topics that I think we need to come back to. What do I do if I don't have motivation? Is there something I can be doing to help me build motivation? So I think we can talk about that in a future episode. How do we find the things that motivate us if it's not that puppy petting moment? What will the things be that help motivate us and help move us forward? So you and I have some thoughts that we've been discussing, and so I just want to let the listeners know we will be back to talk more about this topic of motivation. Because again, in my book, knowing how to fast, knowing what foods to eat only get you so far if you're not also working on this part of the journey. If you're not working on what are the motivation killers for me? What annihilates my little blips of motivation? Why can't I do what I know I should do? This is what you and I are going to keep talking about.
I look forward to it because this, that I agree thoroughly, as my coach and as my colleague, that this is it, right? We can, just like you said, you can know it upside down and up one side and down the other. But if you can't put that into practice, if you can't put your body in the motion of fasting, of changing your diet, of movement, et cetera, that information is useless. This is where the rubber meets the road, folks. Like this piece is where all the magic happens.
Now, Heather, I think this might be a fair thing to do since we plan to do these regular episodes. Behind you, no one can see because these podcasts are not video podcasts, fortunately, but you have a motivation saying behind you at all times when you are in your workspace. Mm-hmm. And you just said something that parallels the saying behind you right now. Since our listeners can't see it, I'm going to read it. And it says, "Nothing happens until something moves." That is from Einstein. But you just nailed that. We've got to get our body in motion. And I don't just mean physical activity, but moving forward, doing the things that will get us to goal. So nothing happens until something moves. I challenge everyone between now and the next time Heather and I come back, get something moving. What's the lever you're going to pull? What's the movement you're going to make?
Yeah, I got to say that quote definitely spoke to me because we don't get anywhere by staying still. So if we want any chance of our life to change for the better, we got to do something. And oftentimes that does not mean stay in our head and think about it. It means to actually do something.
On that note, folks, happy fasting, and we will be back with another episode next week. And Heather and I will be back again soon to talk more about motivation.